meeting of the Tarpon Springs Planning and Zoning Board. Could we have a roll call?
Mr. Haase, Mr. Seaman,
Here.
Mr. Coiner,
Here.
Mr. Terrapini,
Here.
Mr. Frayne,
Here.
Mr. Stravopoulos,
Here.
Mr. Vesey.
Here. All right, we have a quorum. Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Can we have the quasi-judicial announcement and swearing of speakers?
This is a quasi-judicial proceeding where the Planning and Zoning Board acts in a quasi-judicial rather than a legislative capacity. At a quasi-judicial hearing, it is not the board's function to make law, but rather to apply law that has already been established. In a quasi-judicial hearing, the board is required by law to make findings of fact based upon the evidence presented at the hearing and apply those findings of fact to previously established criteria contained in the Code of Ordinances in order to make a legal decision regarding the application before it. The board may only consider evidence at this hearing that the law considers competent, substantial, and relevant to the issues. If the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has met the criteria established in the Code of Ordinance, then the board is required by law to find in favor of the applicant. By the same token, if the competent, substantial, and relevant evidence at the hearing demonstrates that the applicant has failed to meet the criteria established in the Code of Ordinance, then the board is required by law to find against the applicant. Are there any members of the board wishing to disclose any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest this evening? Seeing none, anyone wishing to speak this evening, if you could please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn in. No, okay. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So sworn.
All right, I guess that brings us to item 4, the first application. Got a question, though. It looks like 4 and 5 are very closely related. Can we address those together, or do we need to address them separately?
Those need to be addressed separately. They're two separate applications for two separate parcels. So unfortunately, or fortunately, they need to be addressed separately.
Okay, well, we've got then application 18-12, conditional use for single-family residence in the T4C transect of the special area plan.
Pat McNeese, Principal Planner. This is a request for conditional use approval to allow construction of a single-family residence in the T4 district of the special area plan. The applicant is seeking this approval to construct a single-family residence on the south side of Spruce Street between Safford Ave and Pinellas Ave. This is in the T4C residential high district of our transect infill code. And I will just quickly summarize the standards for review. The first one, with respect to the land development code, this does meet the standards of the T4C district. With respect to access to alleys, there is a requirement that parking be accessed from an alley when it's available. This property has a rear and a side alley, and staff has determined that neither of those are available. The driveway that's proposed is conforming with other driveways on the street and in the area. So, number 1 is met. Number 2, this proposal is adjacent to other like uses in the district. Number 3, the proposal is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. Number 4, this is not in a historic district or an environmentally sensitive area. Number 5, this use will fit in with the character of the district and the existing uses. I'm sorry, did I skip one? No, number 5. Number 6, there are public services extended to the site currently, so there will be no need to provide new public facilities. And number 7, this project will promote orderly and efficient growth in the city, and staff recommends approval of Resolution 2018-03 with the following conditions: that the conditional use will expire within 1 year of approval if a building permit is not issued for the property. A building permit has been applied for your information. Are there any questions? And the applicant is present.
If there's no questions of staff, I guess we'll open the public comment.
I have a couple
Okay.
questions. Thanks. You mentioned, or so they're applying for a conditional use approval tonight. Why is that? Why do they need the conditional use approval?
This is in a district of the infill code that is slated for mixed use, primarily residential, urban fabric, as the Transact Code states. So it's really geared to sort of transition to mixed use, different housing types. But this single family proposal is, the style of it is consistent with the styles that are recommended. It's like a stoop style home close to the road. So the district itself encourages other types of residential over single families, so that's why the single family is conditional, to ensure that if it's proposed, it carries out the character of the district.
So there's design criteria,
Yes.
which are what?
Well, there are the front setback, which has to be a maximum of 10 feet, which the applicant meets.
Mhm.
The building architecture has to meet the style. This is a stoop with the landing type style, which would to the first floor, which meets the district. The landscaping proposed and the frontage, street screen and coverage meets the district. That's a requirement.
The architectural element? There is an architectural element?
Yes, that has to be met and is met.
And that was in the backup somewhere, a rendering of what the building will look like?
That, I don't think that was included in your packet, just the site plan. It's in the building permit application.
Mhm.
And
And that's where it would be reviewed, not at this level?
yes, all those details were reviewed in the building application. The reason, there are 2 items in your packet that were submitted later on as as part of the conditional use application, so we had to include those. But those are actually 2 items that complete the building permit.
Uh-huh.
But all those details are in the building permit application.
So there is a residential element within this transect of the special area plan, but it just happens to not have a permitted use for single family, and that's the reason for the conditional use application?
The architectural type applies to anything in the district.
No,
So-
not architectural.
I'm sorry.
The permitted use for this property has a residential component.
Yes, it's
Doesn't have the single family.
not as a use by right, only as a conditional use.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, do we have, obviously, I don't think we have public comments. Would the applicant like to comment? All right, well, if there's no further questions or anything, I'd entertain a motion, I guess.
Move to approve?
Second?
All in favor? Oh, discussion.
Yeah, discussion, then it must be a roll call.
Okay. Any discussion? We have a roll call.
Mr. Vesey,
Yes.
Mr. Seropoulos,
Yes.
Mr. Frayne,
Yes.
Mr. Terrapini,
Yes.
Mr. Coiner,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman.
Yes. All right. I guess that brings us to application number 18-13 for a conditional use permit to allow construction of one single-family residence on Lot 3 of the Riverview subdivision. What does the staff have a presentation?
Yes, this lot is right next to the one you just, the item you just had. And the proposal is the same. The only difference is that there's only an alley behind the property at this lot. Again, the condition of the alley is the same. It's not usable. It's blocked, and it's not usable for access. So this project, just to summarize, standards for review, does conform with the Land Development Code. It is compatible with the existing area and neighborhood. It does comply with the city's comprehensive plan. It is not in a historic or environmental area. It will not adversely affect adjoining properties because it's a similar use to what is there and fits with the character of the area. It will not adversely affect the city's ability to supply public facilities. And it promotes orderly and efficient development in the city. Staff is recommending approval of Resolution 2018-04 with the following conditions: that the conditional use will expire within 1 year of approval if a building permit is not issued for the property. And again, a building permit has been applied for on this property as well.
Okay, do we have any questions for staff? Seeing none, the applicant like to comment? And obviously no public comment, so I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve application 1813.
Second.
Let's have a roll call vote.
Mr. Vesey?
Yes.
Mr. Stravopoulos?
Yes.
Mr. Frayne?
Yes.
Mr. Terrapini?
Yes.
Mr. Coiner?
Yes.
Mr. Seaman?
Yes. All right, I guess that brings us to item number 6 on our agenda, application 18-30, proposed ordinance number 2018-07, amending the City of Tarpon Springs Comprehensive Plan, future land use element and coastal planning area and conservation element. Does the staff have a presentation for us?
Yes. There is a staff report in the beginning of this item that you could refer to. Basically, there are 3 primary reasons for this comprehensive plan text amendment coming before you. The first is that we are required to be consistent with the countywide plan with respect to certain requirements on density and intensity in the coastal high hazard area. And we have to have that completely adopted by this summer. So we're starting that process. The second is that in our current future land use element, the land use districts are in the back of the element in a descriptive text format rather than in the goals, objectives, and policies where they need to be to protect the city's ability really to apply those policies as adopted policies. So we've reformatted that and updated the objectives to categorize each of the land use types like residential, commercial, and so on, and provide for those policies. And we've added a goal and objective for the future land use map itself to set the stage for what the map is, what it's for, how it's used, and that sort of thing. So that's the second reason. The third is Scrivener's errors, updates like outdated references like state rules, state agency names, things like that. Those are the primary 3 reasons for this amendment. You have received on the blue paper this evening 2 more parts to this amendment that we're proposing, and that would go into this resolution and be part of this amendment. Those were items that came up after the packet was distributed. Are there any questions on this?
sounds like this is basically housekeeping to get everything current with the ordinances that are already, or the county,
Yes.
so that everything's consistent. Is there anything really changed by this anywhere?
No, the thrust of the countywide requirements are that you cannot raise density and intensity in a coastal high hazard area unless certain criteria are met. Some of that's already in, we're already restricted on doing it because of the countywide plan. They require us to put it in our plan, but things like shelter, evacuation, those types of things, we're just required to say that in our plan. So it's not really a new action. It's more of, kind of memorializing it in our document as well. It's required. The other changes are just to provide for a format of goals, objectives, and policies that will be adopted by the Board of Commissioners to clarify that those are land development standards that must be met rather than descriptive standards.
Any other questions for staff? And obviously, there's no public comments and there's no applicant, so it's kind of strangely quick, but do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Can we have a roll call?
Mr. Vesey,
Yes.
Mr. Strobopoulos,
Yes.
Mr. Frayne,
Yes.
Mr. Terrapini,
Yes.
Mr. Coiner,
Yes.
Mr. Seaman.
Yes. All right. That brings us down to item number 7. Does the staff have comments?
No comments at this time.
Okay, then item number 8, board comments.
I have a comment, if it's all right with you, Mr. Chairman. Sure. Just to follow up with staff, and looking at the minutes of, I guess it would be January 22nd. There was an action item that was similar to what we just voted on as far as ordinance, some new language for an ordinance, and it had to do with the Land Development Code Amendment to Sections 230 Technical Review Committee. Oh, no, wait a minute. Is that right? It had to do with reimbursement, a fee reimbursement from developers when required to spend more money through the application process. And I was wondering if that application ever went to the Board of Commissioners.
That application did go forward. It was adopted, but the requirement for reimbursement of consulting fees is what you're talking about. That had been removed from the proposed text amendment after the Planning and Zoning Board recommended denial on that.
Thank you.
All right. I guess if we have no further board comments, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Second.
We're adjourned.
Might have been the quickest one I've ever been to.
I thought 30 was going to hang
I mentioned you guys, this is my favorite board. You guys were my favorite.
Not very many get done this quick.